too many. That's good.
What story?
It's on your program. The epic story of the cockroach. Okay, so here's how the story goes. I went to school at BIU Hawaii.
Yeah.
I know, great. We have some BYU Hawaii alumni here. It's good. Anyway, my last term that I lived there, I lived in the dorms for most of the time that I was there, but my last term I decided to live off campus, and I was kind of late in getting into any housing, so the only thing that was left when I finally got around to getting housing was this one-room studio apartment that I shared with a Chinese girl and her mom, and it was pretty ghetto. We had lots and lots of little lizards, and we had lots of huge cockroaches. They were about this big, and they frequently would fly through the air, and it would cause mass hysteria. Everyone would be screaming, "Ah!" and we had some fun trying to kill them. But anyway, and incidentally, the Chinese girl's mom used to clean the floor with toilet water. Also interesting. But anyway, okay, so this is a great place that I lived. Well, my brother and sister came to visit me when I was there, and we enjoyed some time together. The night before graduation, I was getting ready to fly home, and I was packing my bags. And it got to be pretty late. It was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I got pretty tired, so I decided I would go ahead and lay down on the futon because my brother had fallen asleep on my bed. And I fell asleep on the futon. About 5 o'clock in the morning, I started having these dreams about wind and water in my ear. You know, like I was in the ocean. Well, it lasted for a little while, and I was able to kind of sleep through it and have these dreams. But pretty soon it got kind of uncomfortable to the point where I couldn't sleep through it anymore. So I decided to get up and finish packing my bags because I needed to. And this time it was probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, this feeling of wind and water kept coming. And I thought, well, but here's the thing. I realized something. I was like, well, if I shaked my head, it would stop. But I thought, I can't walk across the stage for graduation that way, and walk across and shake my head every few feet. So I decided to do an experiment. And I would see what would happen if I didn't shake my head. So I waited, and pretty soon the feeling came again, and this wind and water in my ear. And I waited, and pretty soon it changed to this feeling of scratching deep inside my head. And it was at that moment that I realized I have a bug in my ear. Okay, so at first it was kind of like, aha, and then it was like panic. And I started to like whimper. And I went over and started to wake up my sister, who was asleep on one of the bunk beds. I started to shake her. She rolls over and goes, "What?" And I said, I think I have a bug in my ear. And she sits up and goes, "Let's kill it." So she takes me into the bathroom, and I lean over the sink, and she gets a cup full of water, and she starts to pour the water into my ear. And as that water hit that bug, that thing went ballistic. So I take it over, and I started screaming, and she goes, "Hold still, I haven't got it yet!" And she pours more water into my ear, and pretty soon it started to pulsate, and then it stopped moving. Oh. But I could still feel it. Okay, if I pushed on this little part of my ear right here, which incidentally is called the tragus, I could feel it. It was kind of like, only it didn't make noise. But I could feel it. So, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning at this time. Well, my bishop at the time happened to be a PA, and he lived right across the street in faculty housing, which is right next to the temple. It kind of gives you a reference point. So we went over, and I thought, well, we could wake him up, and maybe he could help me out. Or we could get him. I hadn't really thought about waking him up. But anyway, so we went over, and we looked in all the windows, and the lights were off, and I was like, oh, I don't want to wake him up. He's got little kids. I really don't. And so anyway, so we were standing in front of the house, and my sister looks at me, and she's like, well, what do you want to do? I looked at her, and I said, well, it's dead. So I went to graduation. I know. And I sat next to this really cute boy. And the whole time I thought, don't look at my ear. No, it's actually, you really couldn't see it. But anyway, so I went across the stage and it was fine. And I saw my bishop's wife afterwards. And I flagged her down and I'm like, hey, guess what? I have a bug in my ear. And she goes, oh, okay. Anyway, well, I was supposed to fly home that afternoon. But my flight was canceled. Now, this is the part where people start to ask questions. They go, why didn't you get this bug out of your ear? And I have to tell you, in justification, I didn't have a car, I didn't have money, I didn't have insurance, it was a Saturday, I didn't have a doctor other than my bishop. And so, the next day at church, my bishop came up to me after the meeting started and he goes, I have a little problem. I said, yeah, he goes, okay, let's go now, we'll take care of it. So we went in there, and he looks in my ear with a stethoscope, otoscope, and he goes, yeah, there's a little bug in there, and he's, well, first of all, we're going to try and blow it out with a water gun. So he has a great big water gun, and he starts squeezing that water in there, and it hurt really bad. And he said it wouldn't damage my ear, which is why he wanted to use it, just so you know that's not true, it can. But anyway, nothing came out. So he goes in there with these big long tweezers, and he pulls out a little section, it's probably about that big. And I thought, oh, that's like half of it. He goes in for the rest, and it was kind of like this feeling of a cork coming out of a bottle. It's kind of like, pulled it out, and it was at least 3/4 of an inch long, maybe longer. And I was curious about it. Anyway, okay, this is the best part of the story. So at this point, it had been in there for probably about 30 hours. It was a wet, dead bug in my ear. A little small, damp, dark place. And it had started to decay. It's okay, it's not that bad. But, don't worry. Anyway, so that when I stuck my finger in my ear, I could smell it. And it smelled like dead bugs. Okay, so I was trying to get everybody to smell it, and I had a friend who was with me at the time, and I kept trying to get her to smell my finger. I mean, really. And she wouldn't do it. And years later, I always wondered, why wouldn't she smell my finger? Well, years later, I was telling this story and asked her, why didn't you smell my finger? And she goes, Kristen, I did not need to smell your finger. I could stand next to you and smell it. And that is the cockroach story. Thank you.